Hey, Pastor Steve Waldron. I hope you're having a great day or night in Jesus. We're going to be looking today at why use the Byzantine traditional text. Why not use some of these newer, found, maybe sometimes older scraps of manuscripts for translating the Bible? And I have to say, as a caveat, sometimes the older, newer found, but older in existence do agree with King James Version of the Bible and other traditional text forms like basically your Reformation text Bibles. So let's get into it. We're on TextusReceptusBibles.com. Thanks for being here. Do check out our other videos on the channel and hit subscribe, bell notification. So the case for the Byzantine priority, and because it's known as, he's going to explain this, it's known as a Byzantine text, Textus Receptus, majority text. Sometimes those are delineated, sometimes they're just kind of all lumped into one. So the case, the New Testament in the original Greek according to the Byzantine majority text form, and this is by Maurice A. Robinson and William G. Pierpoint. So let's just read through it. I'll make comments probably as we read through it. So the Byzantine text form, otherwise called the majority or traditional text, patriarchal text you'll hear sometimes, predominated throughout the greatest period of manual copying of Greek New Testament manuscripts, a span of over 1,000 years, from AD 350 to AD 1516. Printing press, you know, it's odd that the printing press comes out almost the exact year that Byzantium was overrun, that Byzantium, Constantinople falls. I think that's, you know, maybe the providence of God in all of that. And so it's the overwhelming majority of all Greek manuscripts, and it was the overwhelming majority of things copied during that time, at least in Greek. Now, the Bible's in 500 plus languages. It's China and Japan and all this is lost Christianities that I enjoy studying about. I do a lot of that stuff on Biblical Archaeology Today, a podcast with Steve Waldron. You can go find stuff over there on that. It was without question the dominant text used both liturgically and popularly by the Greek-speaking Christian community. Most Greek manuscripts in existence today reflect this Byzantine text form. Now, just to reemphasize, this is the text form that undergirds or underlies, you know, your Reina Valera, your New King James, your MEV, your KJV, your Luther Bible, on and on. Whether appearing in normal continuous textile or specially arranged in lectionary format for liturgical use, of the over 5,000 total continuous text and lectionary manuscripts, 90% or more contain a basically Byzantine text form. There may be a dot missing here or something, or a letter partially not formed correctly, but almost totally. This statistical fact has led some simply to refer to this text form as a majority text. Now, von Siden, a textual critic over 100 years ago or so, he developed a specific thing for the majority text. But a lot of times people just say, well, since it's overwhelming majority, we'll just call this the majority text. This misnomer, however, gives a false impression regarding the amount of agreement to be found among Byzantine manuscripts where places of variation occur. No two Byzantine-era manuscripts are exactly alike, and there are a good number of places where the testimony of the Byzantine-era manuscripts is substantially divided. In such places, the archetypical Byzantine text form must be established from principles other than that of number alone. So, you know, if you got 561 that say this and 560 say this, the 560 wins. No, there's other factors. What were their archetypical manuscripts they were copying from? What were they? What family of manuscripts? It has a provenance. Let's say it's from the 12th century, but it's copying a 10th century, which copied a 8th century, which copied a 4th century, which copied a 2nd century. And then you have all kinds of witnesses from the 2nd century of early Christian writings that agree with it, on and so forth. Does it match what we know about the Greek language? An important consideration is that, except for a very small family relationships which have been established, the bulk of Byzantine-era documents are not closely related in any genealogical sense. That means they were being copied all over the empire. and out of the empire. A presumption, therefore, is toward their relative independence from each other rather than dependence upon one another. This makes the Byzantine majority of manuscripts highly individualistic witnesses, which cannot be summarily lumped together as one mere text type to be played off against other competing text types. This relative autonomy has great significance, as will be explained. The Byzantine majority text form is not the text found in most modern critical editions, such as those published by the United Bible Societies or the various Nestle's Island editions. Byzantine and Tischendorf before that. Byzantine readings, however, often cited in the apparatus notes to these editions. The critical Greek editions favor a predominantly Alexandrian text, deriving primarily from early vellum and papyrus documents having an Egyptian origin. A clear minority of manuscripts in any case. And so also, you have Coptic manuscripts as well, not written in Greek, a little south of Egypt also, which is a whole different thing. Metzger does a good job going into that. But because the Byzantine text forms are many times independent witnesses, that actually increases their veracity. Instead of it just being one manuscript that was copied 5,000 times, well, that'd really just be one witness. It's thousands of witnesses. And also I did want to mention too, is a lot of these early papyrus vellum manuscripts are being highly challenged now for their date. It should be remembered that most of the very readings pertaining to one or another text type are trivial or non-translatable and are not readily apparent in English translation. Significant translatable differences. So, like when Mormon comes out with his great book, I recommend to everybody, 8,000 differences between, I forget the exact name, but it's basically the Byzantine type and the Alexandrian manuscripts. Most of those 8,000s are non-translatable, extremely minor. But as we've gone over ad nauseum here and done comparison after comparison after comparison, there's many dozens into the hundreds that are translatable that are massively doctrinally important. That's the reason Byzantine text type is known as the ecclesiastical text. It's more sacred in it's what it has. It promotes the deity of Jesus in greater degree, almost overwhelmingly, and on and so forth. Holiness. Not all early manuscripts, however, favor the Alexandrian text, and few are purely Alexandrian in character, and that's a massive thing that William Dean Burgon showed, is they don't agree amongst themselves. Sinaiticus and Vaticanus, two biggest Alexandrian manuscripts, so to speak, have tons, thousands upon thousands of differences amongst themselves. Many early papyri reflect mixture with a more Western type of text, but few, if any, scholars today favor the Western readings found in such manuscripts. And Western would be like Roman, and as opposed to Eastern. And then there's a Caesarean. Now they're saying really there's only one text type. It's Byzantine, and then you've got eclectic text that really don't agree among themselves with scraps of paper, and that's really the basic view. Such rejection, although well-founded, is basically subjective. On a similar basis, the early date and certain preferred readings currently cause the minority Alexandrian manuscripts to be favored by critics over against those comprising the Byzantine majority text form. Many scholars, particularly those from within the evangelical camp, have begun to reevaluate and give credence to the authenticity claims of the Byzantine text form as opposed to the textual preferences of the past century and a half. Now let me stop there and share something. I find it interesting that the Southern Baptist Publishing House has felt the need to publish Bibles with a pure Cambridge edition, King James. And so I think Floyd Nolan Jones is Southern Baptist. So they're recognizing even within their movement, and then there are many in the Reformed community, whether Reformed Baptist or Presbyterian, that it's exploding that the Byzantine text type is the correct text type as well. And even amongst conservative Methodist, Wesleyans, Nazarene holiness camp as well. The Alexandrian-based critical texts reflect the diverse textual theories held by various critics. A preference for early witnesses is espoused by Lockman, Tregelles, or Aland. That's Kurt Aland, his wife Barbara. A partiality for a favorite document as demonstrated by Tischendorf or Westcott and Hort. It's Vaticanus or Sinaiticus. A reasoned eclectic approach as advocated by Metzger and Fee, and I would say probably Carson as well, and a rigorous eclectic approach as argued for by Kilpatrick and Eliot. The weakness of each of these positions is subjective preference for either specific manuscript or its textual allies. And this has even come in, Wilbur Pickering has said he thinks the original comes from a Byzantine family, I think it's F35, which I've done some videos on here quite some time ago on that. A small group of early manuscripts or certain types of eternal evidence regarding reading's length, difficulty, style, or contextual considerations. Now let me just say too about, well, isn't the oldest just always best? Of course not. And so what you have is in the New Testament, like 2 Corinthians 2:17, 2 Peter 3:15 and 16, showing that heretics were already corrupting New Testament manuscripts in the first century. So you might find a first century manuscript that has been corrupted. On the other hand, and I appreciate Metzger and Aland basically admitting this, I think more Aland than Metzger, that you can have a 15th century manuscript that reflects the original writings of the apostles, because in its provenance, maybe again in the 15th century he was copying from an 8th century manuscript. That 8th century manuscript, it 6 centuries, it's fallen apart, was copied from a 2nd century manuscript. That's where the 6 centuries I was thinking of, which was an accurate representation of what the apostles and New Testament writers wrote. And so, and this is what the Dead Sea Scrolls showed us, like in Isaiah, probably the earliest dating for that great Isaiah scroll now is 150 BC. We've got Codex Leningradensis from 916 AD, well over a millennium, well over 1,000 years older, and they're identical. And so people are like, well, there's no way the 916 manuscript could be what Moses wrote, it could reflect what Moses wrote. Obviously, nobody's claiming it's what Moses actually wrote, but it's the accurate representation of what Moses actually wrote. Well, then they find this, it's over 1,000 years older, that it's identical in Isaiah. Well, then Isaiah is only writing in the 700s BC, in the early 700s BC. So now you've only got to go back another 500 years or so from the time of the Dead Sea Scroll Isaiah. Of course it could be accurately kept. And so that's the reason older readings are not automatically rejected. It's kind of when you first get into the study, your first month, 2-3 months, and you're just reading 2-3 books. You read White and you read Fee and you read some others, and you maybe just only get one perspective. You're like, yeah, that minuscule tradition from the 12th century and all this. But there's far more to it than that when you really get into textual studies. They teach it on a college level. So God bless. I love you. Thanks for being here. Join us daily. Hit the bell notification when you subscribe and share with your friends, family, church family. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.